Hello there and welcome to another episode of Challenge, and in today's episode we've gone over to the Xbox for this particular one. This one comes from RKD, and this challenge is for the game Sega GT Online, or 2002. They're really technically the same game, but I'm using online because it's got more stuff in it and it's my preferred way of playing the game. His challenge is to play through the game's Chronicle Mode with the slowest card that you have available in the mode, which is the Honda S600. By a considerable margin, in fact. It only has about 56 or so horsepower. It's very, very little, especially compared to all the other vehicles you can use in the class. It's definitely a lot more of a challenge to try and use this vehicle. But what's the challenge in particular with the S600? It's to finish at least second place in all of the races, all whilst having both traction control and stability management turned on, which is what I've got here, as you just saw, if you looked at the speedometer. So, it's kind of an interesting challenge, because I can easily play through Chronicle Mode with all the different vehicles and get first place, but the S600 is kind of an interesting one, because it's so slow. With all the other vehicles, you really get a sense of just, it's kind of easy to get through it, because one of the things that the whole purpose of the mode is you take the old vehicle and you kind of go through the years from starting from the 70s and up until the early 2000s. And with the mode, basically, and I apologize, I always try to make sure my microphone is close to my mouth, but because of the way this kind of the Boom Pro works, it likes to get away from me sometimes, so I kind of have to make sure to keep it close. So if the volume, like how close I'm being heard, sounds a bit different, that's why. But anyways, so you take the car, you go through the whole generations, and this track, Brick Raceway, is always the track you're going to have for 70s. The tracks don't really change that much. I don't know if it's dependent on which car you're driving, or if it's just or if it's random, but usually you're going to get the same tracks for each thing. They very rarely change. It's only on odd occasions that it might change. But Brick Raceway will always be the same no matter what. It never changes. And with the first three, there's 6 of them in total. The first 3, it kind of starts off with like a brown, the brown sepia tone or whatever it's called, and it just and as you race, it gradually, all the color comes, and by the time you're up to I think it lasts for 30 seconds or so, maybe a little longer, but what happens is all the color comes and you just basically see it as with all the color. I didn't really think of a good way to say that. Oops. But you might notice, yes, that's a Camaro Z28, a 70s Camaro, which I decided to be a dick and take, but also kind of nearly ruined myself. You might be asking, why the hell is this small little Honda with 50 plus horsepower catching up? Has to do with the kind of the rubber, somewhat of a rubber banding effect. At the start of a race, the way the AI works is they have power multipliers, and so the cars will often get quite a bit ahead at the start. But as the race goes on, their power multiplier begins to decrease and decrease, and eventually over time, their power is been reduced so much that even the car like the S600, if you can drive it very well, will easily catch up to the rest. But that doesn't mean it's still a challenge in some cases, as you'll see later on. But yeah, basically, you go through all the Chronicle Mode races. Excuse me. You try to have to at least come third place. If you don't, you have to go and do it again. And depending on the position you finish, you'll get a set of points. Third place, I believe, will give you 3 points. Second place, 4 points, and first place, 5 points. Those points are used after each race to install an upgrade into your vehicle. Basically, whichever upgrade you take is the one you go with, because you can only use one. You can only install one upgrade at a time per race after each race. So you use the points, and that you think which part of the car I want to make better. As you can see, I was able to come first place there. I'm doing this post commentary just because it's a little bit easier, because that way I can kind of really focus on hopefully what I'm talking about. And so you see there, first place, 5 points. That's the best as possible. I've removed all the loading screens and whatnot. You get a little plaque there that just says clear, and the color depends on where you finish. So first place, for example. And you saw I did a couple there because I had to do a couple in order to unlock the S600, because you only have a selection to start with. You have to unlock some more by actually doing the mode. So the S600 takes you have to, I think you gotta do I believe it's 3. You have to at least do 3 to unlock it, because like I said, it's one of the ones where it comes a bit later. In total, I believe there is 5 additional ones you can unlock. I want to say 5, if my memory serves me correct, because the ones you have at the start of the game, at the start of the Chronicle Mode, and as you can see here, by the way, we're now at the early 80s, and you can see I went with tires because it kind of helps give this old car a bit more grip and stuff. It's already a lightweight car, and it make it even a little bit better. But you can see here, like, we're going like it's like an Audi Sport Quattro, and other cars and whatnot, like an R30 Skyline and whatnot, and it's like cars that the S600 should have no business even keeping up with. But again, it's all got to do with how the power multiplier works, and so like the AI the AI's own abilities and stuff. So it looks like an impossible task at first, but then they gradually start slowing down as the lap goes on and whatnot, and then we can easily like there when the opportunity's there can go for the overtake, and then we just got me smacking into the back of that Silica, and then the Sport Quattro's right there, and it's not really leaving us. We're staying right there with it. So yeah, you use the upgrade, and then it just gradually goes on, and then as you go through each race with generations, like early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, late 90s, and then finally at 21st century is the last one. The cars you face are all from those periods. So when we first started, we just had a bunch of 70s cars and whatnot, and now of course we have a bunch of cars from the early 80s, and then we get to the next race, it'll be a bunch of cars from the late 80s. But yeah, and then so that's pretty much how it works. So, if I can remember this correctly, which I think I do, the list of cars that you can use in Chronicle Mode are the following. You got the Nissan Skyline 2000 GTR, the KPGC10, which aka all known by perhaps tuner fans as the Hakosuka. You have a Mazda Savana RX-3. You have an Alfa Romeo Giulia, trying to remember its entirely name, the Giulia GTA or something like that. You can tell like in the moment it's like my brain's turning off a little bit. But yeah, it's most definitely the Giulia GTA. You have like the original Toyota. You have like the very original Toyota Celica, which is like the 1300 G. I think it's specifically the 1300 GT. So that's 4. You have the Lotus Europa, like the Lotus Europa S. You have a C3 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray, and then the ones you unlock are the Nissan Fairlady Z, the original, or Datsun 240Z. The Renault Alpine A110. The Honda S600. The Jaguar E-Type, and then I believe the last one is a Toyota 11 AE27, I think it is, specifically. And yeah, I'm kind of looking this up to make sure, like, at least with, I was mentioning with the Celica. Oh no, it's not the 1300, it's the 1600 GT, what am I saying? Sorry, I think the problem is I got these other ones kind of venturing about in my head that it's not all like just coming right to me, so that's the deal with that, really. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. So so like I said, you have like six cars and whatnot. Oh, and I just looking up a video. The Toyota comes before the Alfa Romeo, the Giulia Sprint GTA. That's it. I was close enough. But I say it comes before, like the from the Skyline, the RX-3, the Celica, the Giulia, and the Europa and the Corvette, like I said, like I kind of hinted at, they are unlocked right at the start. Then you have to unlock the other ones, like the 240Z, the A110, the S600, the E-Type, and then, yeah, it's the 11T E27, that's it. That's the last one you unlock, and so you might be asking, what's the point of the mode? Basically, the whole point of the mode is you're trying to, once you complete a Chronicle Mode with a particular car, you manage to get through the whole thing, you will unlock an extra vehicle, that you will unlock like an extra vehicle that you can get for the quick battle mode, which is just basically the game's like kind of single race mode where you can just choose a car, choose a track, and just do some racing and stuff. You know, the usual kind of stuff that you would expect in a lot of like games like this. So yeah, even though this one, you can note that this one was definitely a bit closer. That Celica was definitely keeping it very interesting. I guess its power multiplier was still fairly okay enough, but we still won regardless, so it doesn't matter too much, really. So yeah, that's, like I said, I only had to come second in these, and we've already gotten first place in both of these, so that's already a pretty good start, I would have to say. And I paused it for a bit there so you could actually see like the little picture frame. It just takes a picture of when you cross the line. So, because I got the tires first time around, I went for the bolt-on turbo for the third race, because that will help give the car a little bit more power. So now you see you got a whole bunch of late 80s cars, with the exception of one. For whatever reason, there's a 1977 Lotus Esprit that always shows up in the late 80s races. I have no idea why they did that, but it is what it is. The second track, by the way, we're at was called Standing Night Speedway, and the third one here is Falcon Wing Circuit A. So for the second race, it usually almost always is Standing Night Speedway. It's very rarely something else, but more often than not, it's usually Standing Night Speedway. Sometimes it might be another one called Great Castle Pass, I believe, or is it Green Castle Pass? I can't even remember. Why is my brain shutting off today? I really should have made sure to look over everything, but it's Green Castle Pass. I remember now for sure. Definitely had green in the name. But anyways, so you have this excuse me. Alright, so hopefully though, we won't have too many more brain shut-offs. But yeah, this track is Falcon Wing Circuit A. Yes, it is called Circuit A because there is a Circuit B variant, which is like a longer version of the track with like an extended section or a different area that you go. And this particular one is one of the shorter tracks, so even with the Slowest 600, it still won't take too long. And putting on the bolt-on turbo definitely helps, especially because, again, the way the power multiplier works and everything. Now, for whatever reason, you might have also noticed at the start of each of these races, the car in front of you is always kind of highlighted and shown. With most of the times, the car in front of you will be the representative vehicle of, like, the kind of like evolution vehicle of yours at like this certain point. So when we get to the late 90s, we'll see exactly what would have been the equivalent for this vehicle, the S600. But say you use like the Skyline and stuff. If you remember, we saw an R30 Skyline during the early 80s. When you get to the early 80s bit, the car in front of you that it shows will in fact be the R30 Skyline. And then you get to like early 90s, it turns into like the R32, late 90s R33, 21st century R34. But for whatever reason, in a lot of cases, of course not all the time, because it depends on the kind of vehicle you have, the late 80s vehicle, they don't usually always have a representative car for it. And in most cases, it always tends to be the Sprinter Truno. I don't know why, it just happens to be that way. Now, the early 90s one is actually kind of a little bit interesting, kind of makes a bit sense. It's like a Mazda Miata, two-seater, like little roadster and stuff. So it's close enough, I suppose. And I believe I wasn't entirely paying attention because I was a bit focused on looking at something. I believe we went for the weight reduction. This car is already very light to begin with, but you know, just reduce the weight a bit further, kind of make it a little bit snappier and whatnot. Especially because of the kind of cars we're going up with now. Like, they'll be pretty quick to start off with. Like, you see you got a Mark III A70 Toyota Supra. We've got a Z32 Fairly Z up there, and then and then right at the front there is the original Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution. And if you're wondering, by the way, no, the cars aren't always the same. Like I said, you get representative cars, but it just also depends. Like, sometimes you'll get fairly lucky with the choice of cars you go against, and other times you'll get some of the more difficult ones that show up for that specific period. The track we're on here, by the way, is Turquoise Sea Park. As you can see, it's very much a variant of Brick Raceway. It basically has like a different kind of section you go into, and then the rest of the track here is pretty much taken straight from Brick Raceway, but it's more kind of set at like is it supposed to be like sunset or early dawn? I'd probably say it's more like sunset. I think it's like a gloomy kind of like sunset kind of vibe. I think. I don't think it's early dawn. Again, this track is almost always the same by the time you get to this. I think in a rare occasion you can get another track. I believe the track is Sun Orchard Park, which is a much smaller track, but it's still kind of housed within this particular area. But yeah, and you'll notice when you play this game, the tracks are the way it pretty much is like most of the tracks are kind of housed in the same kind of base scenery, but there's just variations. Like there's this one, there's Brick Raceway, there's what I mentioned, Sun Orchard Park. We have Falcon Wing Circuit A and B, no Circuit C. We saw Standing Night Speedway, we had Greencastle Pass, and we have a third variant which I haven't mentioned yet because we'll actually get to that later. And then of course another set which I believe we haven't even seen it all yet, so we'll also get to that. And then of course there's like an oval speed track, but that never shows up in Chronicle Mode no matter what. There's a drag race, which again will never show up, and then there's a snow rally thing called White Steps, which yet again will never show up. But there's also 2 additional tracks with Sega GT Online. Again, as you can probably guess, again they'll never show up. They will never show up in this mode. I'm trying to remember the names. I think it's Buffalo Hill and Eastern Breeze Circuit, and they, unlike the other tracks, they don't actually use any. They don't actually use any existing layouts. They use their own. I believe they actually use their own unique layouts for that. So it kind of makes it a bit more unique that way. And yeah, I'm kind of just, you can kind of tell I'm just kind of really going into detail about this game. It's funny because it's almost like I'm kind of doing like a let's play of it, but I'm not really, because again this is all like post commentary and stuff. That's pretty simple, yeah. So if you're curious, by the way, because Sega G 2002 and online. Why do I choose online? Again, it has a couple extra tracks. It also has quite a few more vehicles, some very interesting vehicles and whatnot. It has some more parts to make the cars even faster and stuff. And when the game was new, it did have an online mode, so you could play like the game online and stuff with against other people. Wasn't particularly the best. It was a little bit laggy. It was notably laggy because also we're going with the port polish this time around. It was a little bit laggy. I still keep saying a little bit laggy. I'm thinking I'm stuck on it. Anyways, now we're up to the late 90s. Here is the kind of a derivative, like the equivalent of this kind of period. The Honda S2000. Because yeah, the S2000 was very much like a more, at the time, of modern interpretation of what this S600 was. And you can see here the power multipliers, and we're on a mostly speedy track. This is Blue Steel. This particular one is Blue Steel Speedway. Is the track. This is the third kind of like major like scenery and stuff. There's two track variations. So one you can occasionally get sometimes at this point a track instead called Tornado Pass. And there is a third one. I don't recall if it can ever show up at this particular one. I can't remember. There's a third one called Iron City Circuit. But all three of those tracks, they use the same kind of general base. And yeah, you can see there if you're paying attention. This is a tiny S600 passing a Skyline GTR R33. Makes sense to me. Evo 4, we got an Impreza right there, and there's the S2000, which seems to just have like a lot more of a power multiplier because it's. Now that's not to say it wouldn't compete with these cars, but I didn't think it would compete this much, to say the least. But I guess to be fair, the game's thinking, oh, it's the car that this you know, it's your equivalent. We need to make it the most powerful. And in fact, this particular race was kind of interesting because that S2000, whatever power multiplier it gets, I think it's absurd. Because I'm able to, it's not too hard to get really past the others, but that S2000, for whatever reason, it just goes. It has, like, it must have a higher power multiplier compared to the others. I don't know, but that thing benefits so much. Now you can see there that I'm about to also be passed by the Impreza because this thing will only top out at 88 miles an hour. Haha, DeLorean. But again, like when we get to the corners and stuff, and I'm just kind of gunning it through, just kind of sending it. That's how I'm basically using it as a chance to just get right in front of the AI and just hold them there, hold them steady. And I'm just kind of. And that's one of the reasons I'm looking at this using the bumper camera a lot. Not just because I feel it's the most comfortable to me, the one I'm most natural at using with this game, but it's because it has the rear view mirror. I can look back at them and kind of keep them at bay. So you can see right there. Yes, dude, I was really trying to go for it, and I had to basically play be an asshole mode and do that to it. Whoops. But yeah, it's just is what it is and stuff. Now, of course, I could just let the car go because remember, I only had to come second in these races, but I've come first in the last 4 races. In fact, right there, I thought, maybe I might have to settle for second. But we'll see what happens, right? It's not quite over. As you can see, he's letting off because it's like a kind of the AI thinks it's like a slight corner, and then I do that. It's such a dirty fucking tactic, but come on, it's all for fun, really. It's not like it's not like an actual like person. It's just an AI car at the end of the day. But basically at this point, I'm trying to use that to my advantage because you can see he's already catching up. I know here he lets off a bit, which is where I think, okay, it gives me a bit more time to get down to the line here. I try to keep my position, and then this is where I'm basically a sitting duck. I see him coming up, but I was just ahead enough to keep him off, barely, and that's 5 out of 6 done. Where I finished first, and I only had to come second. So really, we just have to finish the last race now again. To come second to first, and that's an easy challenge pass. So, with that left, I decided for the last one, we'll just go for suspension, make the handling a little bit better, because the next track actually is a bit more technical. It's early 21st century, and that's the track here. And I actually got pretty lucky with my roster vehicles. I got a Fiat Barchetta in front of me, which I guess makes sense, 2-seater convertible and stuff, but I did get honestly fairly lucky. Some of the cars you can get in this are pretty quick. You got like I said, Skyline R34 can show up. You can get like a Mitsubishi Lancer, Evolution. I think it's the 7 that shows up. you can get the one that did actually show up, which is like a Honda NSX Type R, and you can even get like a first generation Lotus Exige to show up. And those cars, when they show up, they're not they don't sit around. They definitely have some power. And what I keep mentioning about the power multiplier too, it also varies from car to car. Like I said, this is the lowest end of the car, so they really kind of lower the multipliers as the race goes on to make it really possible for a slow vehicle like this to compete. But in some of the other vehicles where you have more power to work with, they're balanced around a bit, so it still remains a bit fairly competitive. So I was very lucky, though, not to get the Exige specifically. The Exige is usually the hardest of the bunch, because that one gets a pretty absurd power multiplier. So I only had an NSX. Not that it's impossible if you get an Exige, of course, but it is one you kind of have to like watch out for. So anyways, this track here is this one is specifically Wild Country Raceway. It's basically the longest track in the game for the most part, mostly just because it's very, it's got a whole bunch of technical bits and whatnot, so you're not always completely at speed and whatnot. Oh, and one thing I should also mention, what Online also introduced for track variants was excuse me, is it also included reverse variants of all the tracks. Excuse me. But basically, it's a way to kind of expand out the track. Let's kind of add a bit more to it. I mean, really, it's just kind of flipping which direction you go with the track, but it at least gives you more to race with. And the thing I like too about the reverse variations of tracks is they pretty much all take place at like different times of day. So it's not like it's the exact same kind of like skybox and lighting and everything. They take place at different points, so it gives it more of a bit of a different feel as a result. So yeah, that's pretty much my reason. I would say if you're looking for a copy of this game, just get the online version, because it's really the definitive version of the game. And yeah, you can see what I mean by this being one of the longer tracks, because that took nearly 3 minutes to get around for a single lap with this car. To put it in comparison sake, if you use like one of the really fast cars in the game, and if you're really good, if you use something like the Ford GT Concept, which is like one of the really good ones, or the Vimac RD390 or something, if you use like one of those cars and you go and you do this track, you're really quick enough, you could probably get it done in like a lap done in like probably just under 2 minutes if you're really quick. I'm not entirely like 100% certain of that, so don't quote me. I'll have to probably find it up. Got like something in my mouth. Okay, I'll have to go and like kind of go through it myself and whatnot. Anyways, another thing I guess I could answer is, why would people want to do the Chronicle Mode? Will you get anything for? Actually, I think I did mention you do get cars for the Quick Battle Mode. I guess what I could do is I could try to go through my memory's sake and mention what you can get from Chronicle Mode, like what cars will unlock what. Excuse me. So I'll mention what you get for the S600 once it appears, because I will show it in this video. Excuse me. So, completing all this, the ones for the Skyline, the Hakosuka, will get you the R32 GTR for the Quick Battle Mode. Doing it for the RX-3 will get you the Savannah RX-3 will get you like the original Mazda 110S Cosmo. For the Toyota Celica 1600 GT, you get the original Celica Supra. For the Alfa Romeo Giulia Sprint GT, you actually get I believe it's the Giulia. The Tipo, you get the Alfa Tipo 33 Stradale, a really interesting vehicle. For the Europa, you get the original Series 1 Lotus Elan. For the Corvette Stingray, you get that 70s Camaro that we saw at the start in the first race. For the 240Z, you get the 240ZG. It makes sense. For the Alpine A110, you get the Renault Clio Sport V6. For the E-Type, you actually get an interesting old Jaguar, the Mark II. And for the 11, the TE27, you get the Sprinter Truno AE86. And then when you complete all of them, there's also 6 extra vehicles. And there you go, first place in every race. So not just a challenge pass, but we've obliterated the challenge. So if you do all of them, though, when you beat every 70s race, you get the Ken Mary Skyline, the KPGC 110. Every early 80s, you get the R30 Skyline. Every late 80s, you get the Miata, the little Miata that we saw from the early 90s, which I guess again is one that could have shown there if you're going by year. But I guess to be fair, that it did come out in '89, so I'll let it off. Early 90s, you'll get the DC2 Honda Integra Type R. Late 90s, you'll get the Lotus Elise you'll get the Lotus Elise Exige, for again the Series 1. The 21st century, you'll get the Honda NSX Type R. And then for getting every single one of them done, you'll get the Toyota 2000 GT as well. But we're about to find out which car we get for the S600, because I didn't mention. And yeah, it is the S2000 that we saw from the late 90s race. Makes sense, you know. not really any other way to put it, but yeah, that's quite an easy challenge done. I say easy challenge. It's not going to be easy if you're not used to playing this game and whatnot and getting used to the handling and whatnot. But we were able to beat it quite well. But yeah, that's that one done. If you have a challenge you want to request, please feel free to leave it down below in the comments. But otherwise, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you want to see some of my other videos. Make sure to hit the bell icon so you can get notified on what videos I release next. You can also check out my other links down below in the description, where I've got a Patreon if you want to support the channel, a Twitter if you want to come see my ramblings, a Twitch if you want to watch me stream, a Discord if you want to come and chat with me and others about the channel or similar stuff, and a Curious Cat if you want to ask any questions. Huge shout out to Toxic Honey Badger for being an awesome pledger on Patreon. Thanks again, and I will see you guys on the next video.